We are thrilled to have with us Sebastian Mallaby and thrilled to have all of you who has just published this wonderful book right here, Penguin Press, $30. I recommend that everyone buy at least 100 during the next hour or so. The Power, Law, Venture Capital, and the Making of the New Future. Sebastian, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And the first question I've got, not a journalist, but I'm trying to make this topical, is, as you may know, you'll see when you have the book, Sebastian has this wonderful current picture of Elon Musk, who, as you can see, has not changed a bit. And so based on the fact that he does deal with Musk a little bit in this wonderful new book, Sebastian, tell us what you think is going to happen with Elon Musk and Twitter. Both, will the deal go through? And if it does, what will be the impact?
So, yeah, see, I do have a story in the book about how one day Peter Thiel was in the passenger seat of Musk's supercar, and they were off to raise capital from a venture capitalist on Sand Hill Road. And Musk had apparently gotten out of his very first company before PayPal with about enough money to buy this car. He put, at least 50% of the proceeds from the company into this, I don't know what, $2 or $3 million souped up speedo car. And as he came around a bend, he span the thing out of control, hit the median barrier, the thing spun around a couple more times. Somehow neither he nor Peter Thiel were harmed. But what Peter explained to me about the story is that all Musk could do afterwards was just roar with laughter. And after he finally got done laughing, Peter said to him, "What's so funny?" And Musk said, "I didn't insure it." And this story actually is consistent with basically the relationship between PayPal and Elon Musk. It was called X.com before they did the merger. And he was reckless. He got fired on his honeymoon, not because the venture capitalists were mean, but because the entirety of the company basically came to the investors and said, "You got to get rid of this guy. We can't work with Elon Musk anymore." So the reactions you're seeing now from some of the staff at Twitter are kind of consistent with Musk's history. He doesn't always make people happy. He doesn't mind making people unhappy. So I think it's going to be pretty bumpy. Clearly, he's made a great success of two companies, at least, that he's totally in control of. If he comes in as the new owner of something that he didn't originally control, I'm not predicting where it ends up, but I am predicting that it's going to be a pretty rough ride in the interim.
What do you think his motive is in buying it?
Well, it's clearly not he wants to make more money. It's all about an ideological view that free speech is an absolute important thing, and he thinks it's been dialed down too much. I think one has to take seriously the idea that he is involved in Tesla because he believes that's one way to save the planet from climate change, and then he's involved in SpaceX because he thinks the insurance policy is to have a multi-planetary species which can go and live in Mars if Tesla doesn't work in saving the world from climate change. I mean, he does seem to think in these messianic terms. And so when he says, "I'm buying Twitter because I really am a free speech absolutist," I take him at his word.
So to start off, Sebastian, could you tell everyone what you mean by the power law, and also talk about how VCs allocate capital in the absence of quantitative metrics?
It's not just sort of the craziness of these people that leads them to talk about, backing a flying car. It's because when you have a power law distribution, you kind of have to think that ambitiously. You have to say, "I'm going to back this crazy idea that is, we're going to upend the whole hotel business by having people sleep on the couches of hosts who they've never met before." And of course, that's Airbnb, and it worked. So there aren't quantitative metrics, and nor is there a normal distribution, and that compels a different sort of approach to investing, which is what I was trying to catalog and explain in my book. And I just say that, the key things really about this kind of investing, without the quantitative metrics, no price earnings ratio, because there are no earnings in an early stage startup. It's all about evaluating the people, evaluating the market they're going after, and then trying to apply some sort of rigorous decision science around the way that you process those things.
In terms of the role of venture capital on innovation, growth, and social concerns about big tech, what do you find right now is the most important? Do you feel the impact on innovation has been there, and is it innovation that has created the industry, or is it the industry that's led to the innovations we're seeing?
Culture changes because venture capitalists show up and they de-risk the act of starting a company. They provide the capital, they provide the connections, they provide advice, they help you to hire the first 5 engineers. And they are therefore a machine for manufacturing courage, which then sets the flywheel of innovation going, and it changes norms. And so I'm firmly of the view that once you get enough venture capitalists in one geography, the sort of traditional hesitancy about entrepreneurship will be eroded, and therefore startup culture will spread around the world.
Throughout the book, you tell stories of venture capitalists helping shape companies that are now sort of part of our daily lives. And you quote Bill Gurley of Benchmark saying that venture capital is a grand slam business. Is that the best way to develop companies that will do so much to shape our lives?
Is it bad for society? I don't think so, because I think the risk in pushing for fast growth and for maximal ambition is generating some amazing breakout companies that may never have actually worked if you were not aggressive and if you hadn't pushed hard. I mean, if you think about the way that Uber had to break its way through those medallion holding incumbents who had the local regulators in their pockets, I think it took some aggression to do that. And I think, and scaling up fast can be important. If you're doing a network business, you need to kind of get to scale for the network effects to start to make the business model work. So there are risks. One venture capitalist who I quote in my conclusion says, I sell rocket fuel. If you don't want to build a rocket, don't come to me. And most startups that get founded in America, like 99.something%, do not raise venture capital dollars. But for the aggressive ones who want to go to VCs, it's their choice, and they should be allowed to make that choice. And I think society benefits from that ambition.
One thing you write, Sebastian, which caught my eye was venture capital has flowed more copiously into frivolous apps than to socially useful projects. Notably, the vital area of technologies to fight climate change. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Clean tech went through a disastrous period in sort of 06, 07, 08, where the bets
almost killed Kleiner, right?
That's right, exactly. And I blame the poor returns on those investments mostly on the government, in the sense that I think going into the 2008 election, both the candidates, John McCain and Barack Obama, were promising some sort of climate action. And then what happened is that the financial crisis hit right before the election, and then Obama was elected. He had to prioritize putting the economy and the financial system back together again. And climate took a back seat. Carbon was not priced. There was no regulatory restraint on no cap and trade type of policy. So investments that were predicated on some kind of federal action didn't work. But if you look at the latest round of clean tech, it's been far more profitable. And I think it shows that you can do clean tech investments that work out. And so I am optimistic that venture capital can be stretched into areas beyond software.
But one other thing that you cover is the fact that venture capitalists have to make risks, right? As you note, if you risk $100 and the maximum loss is $100, if you don't invest in the next big idea, your loss is huge. So it has led people to invest huge amounts, particularly in the last 2 years. But we also see in places like Y Combinator, instead of investing in 100 companies, there's 200, now it's 2 batches of 500 each. So is that philosophy really correct in one way? And is that a philosophy that is also relevant to the broader economy, that is not necessarily very risk-taking?
Yeah. So I think, so on the last point, I don't think it's a good strategy for investing in the broader economy. I mean, I think there is, the power law is the title I chose because it applies at multiple levels to the startup and venture capital world. For a start, if you look at startups in general, many fail and a few succeed. So you have a sort of fat right tail there. If you look at new technologies, many end up not working, but a few succeed big time. And then you get a kind of Moore's law effect where they start to grow exponentially. If you look at network technologies, they have not only a Moore's law effect, but they have a Metcalfe's law effect, where the bigger the network grows, the more valuable it is. And then on top of that, when you look at venture capital portfolios, you have that distribution I described where all of the returns are in a handful of bets. And if you look at venture capital partnerships, a few partnerships are generating nearly all the profits in the venture capital industry. So the power law operates on multiple levels. It doesn't necessarily operate if you're just thinking about, I don't know what, the auto industry or the books industry or whatever. I don't think it's the same thing necessarily. And so we should restrict power law logic to the world of tech startups and investing in them. The other thing I'd say is that just because, I mean, this is a difficult thing to grapple with, but power law portfolios where you go, your returns are like 0, 0, 0, 15x, 0, 0, that kind of thing, it does look like Las Vegas. I mean, it looks like a casino, but it's not a casino. There's a difference between somebody who looks at these skewed distributions of returns and makes very good choices against that distribution, and another venture partnership that comes along and looks at the same set of returns, but just doesn't choose as well. So the fact that ex ante, you don't know which of your bets is going to work, there is still a difference between clever venture capital investing and not clever venture capital investing. And so I think that, the question for Y Combinator is, can it be clever and be selective in who it admits when it scales up? If it can remain capable of choosing, better than average founders who have a better than average chance of creating a company that really turns out to be valuable, then more power to you if you scale up those 2 batches of startup founders. The question is, can you maintain the quality?
One other question, which is, if I may, you talk in the book about Meg Whitman, about Eric Schmidt, about sort of the so-called grown-ups, right? Because you go from the model of VCs coaching and mentoring to then having the so-called grown-up heads of the Googles or other companies. How important was that evolution in terms of moving in that direction? And where we are today moving forward, do you see the same trend, or do you see that sort of moving back to the entrepreneurs themselves running their companies more and not necessarily using that model?
What I would favor is that, the brilliant, young, driven, super dedicated, innovative founder, I'm all for it. But let that person please, have a serious board with experienced people, and maybe sometimes, an experienced co-founder or trusted deputy, Sheryl Sandberg with a bit more power is what you really want to keep the founder, make sure that person is still functioning in the best interest of the company.
Thank you so much for doing this, Sebastian. And Thank you, everyone. The Power Law is the title of the book. Brilliant book, brilliant author. Thank you all very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Nice to speak to you.